Welcome everybody. My name is Jenny Parker. I'm the coordinator for CSTP. I'm so glad you're here. If this is your first time joining us, we try to do something every quarter. So we have our newsletter that went out last month, and then we have a conference call like this one, which is sort of a planned presentation where people can share information or advice, and then we can kind of have a Q&A discussion. And then next month, we have our networking call, which is less formal. It's very informal, and we just sort of, we don't have any specified topic. We're just able to kind of set aside an hour just to kind of discuss relevant topics or ask questions of other people that work in the world of child support training, and kind of see what's going on for other communities and kind of answer questions for each other. So those are always very fun too, but I know it can be confusing. What's the difference between the conference call and the networking call? I've got some helpful links I'll pop here in the chat. The first one is our contact information form. So if this is your first time joining, if you're not on our distribution list and you'd like to be, you can enter in your information and you'll be added to that distribution list. So you'll get our newsletter, you'll get our conference call invite, our networking call invite, and you can add those to your calendar. If you are joining and you would like to share something with the Child Support Training Partnership, either through one of these conference calls, presentations, or through the newsletter, there's a submission form. We also have an advisory committee, which meets once every quarter, just for an hour. It too is a very relaxed environment. Nothing is required of anybody, but it's a really great place to help sort of pick some topics. It's a smaller group, so we're able to kind of connect up a little bit easier. It's not as large as the partnership at whole, and so it's a really helpful group to be a part of. And so if you're interested in that, there's a link on that submission form as well for any way that you'd like to get involved with CSTP. And just as a reminder, anytime you fill out that submission form, it just goes to me. It doesn't go anywhere, and it's no obligation. You're not required. It's just sort of like a little nudge to me to say, hey, reach out to this person. So even if you just have some questions and you're not sure of something, but you are interested, go ahead and fill that out. That'll kind of cue me to reach out to you and get in touch. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I promise I am not a scary person. I won't make you do anything you don't want to do, but definitely if you have any ideas or suggestions or anything that you'd be interested in getting involved with, I highly recommend filling out that form. And then the last one is just kind of a link to our networking call. Oh, the last link isn't working. I'll update it. I'll make sure that I've got the right link there for our next networking call to make sure that you all get that invite to join. So with that, with all of those announcements, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Melanie, who's here today to talk to us about continuous quality improvement. So I'll hand it on over.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate it. My name is Melanie Lance, and I am in the Columbia, South Carolina area. I don't know where the rest of you are from, but I'm enjoying outside today for the first time in, I don't know, since June, that we want to be outside. I don't know where the rest of you are, but it is very, very humid. Columbia, South Carolina is actually known, like their motto is famously hot. So it's a double entendre, I'm sure, but it is very hot here. So anyway, enjoying the outdoors. But there are only 3 of you here that I can see. I don't know if there are more, but that's all I can see at this point on my view. But I would like you to feel free to talk to me as much as you want to, or any questions. Oh, there we go. More people showing up. Hello, Christine. I see you now. So I don't know what you guys know about continuous quality improvement, but we're going to start sharing the slides. But up here you can see Kathy Moore. She and I work together, and she is going to be doing the PowerPoint for me. She'll be my Vanna White today because, as I was telling Jenny, for whatever reason, it hates me. Zoom absolutely hates my computer. It hates me. So trying to do the PowerPoint always gets wonky, but you can go ahead and share that if you want to.
Yep.
I'll do it. Hey, you guys, welcome. Yeah, and Melanie, there are a lot more than 3 people on here, so we're good to go.
Great. I see more
Yeah,
people now
we're gonna
because
have a good conversation.
yes, we're
I'm
gonna
gonna
do
be quiet.
lots of chatting. Okay, so I don't know what your understanding or whatever you've had to do with CQI, but kind of let me give you some sort of a just a tiny little background. I worked with South Carolina DSS. I worked with their CSS department and a couple other different divisions that they had on continuous quality improvement. And it started out with the entire organization doing kind of a little activity on, they kind of took like a test of sorts just to kind of get them familiar with it, some activities online. And then of the people that, completed that, then we went to a smaller group and started working on the next phase of CQI. And then we went into a smaller group and went to the final phase. And those smaller groups are the ones that actually started kind of infiltrating DSS and actually using CQI. So I'm going to give you the 10,000-foot view of what CQI is and kind of a little bit how we used it. And we're going to, stop for questions in the chat box. And Jenny, I'm going to rely on you to tell me if people ask questions. You can just stop me and, whatever. We're all family, so stop me whenever you need to. But here's kind of what it is. The biggest thing that I can tell you about continuous quality improvement is it's data driven. And it's not, you're not pointing out and looking at someone specifically. We'll get into that in just a minute, but a lot of the organizations that we work with, they do quality assurance, QA. This is not quality assurance because that tends to be looking more at, a specific thing that a person's doing. This is looking at where is the breakdown? Something is not happening that needs to happen. Where's the breakdown? Where in the system, what's happening that's keeping the whole thing from running smoothly and getting what we need to get done. All right, Kathy, you can go to the next one. Okay, so what is CQI? Now this, I'm going to show you this video in just a minute, but this is the simplest way that I can possibly write down CQI. Back pre-COVID, when we actually, when you would go to Chick-fil-A, you would get your drink. Say that you're going in the drive-thru, you would get your drink and it would like the straw would already be in your drink and half of it would have the paper on it. And I remember thinking back then, how in the world did they do that? So I read about it. I read this whole big old thing. Actually, in the CQI book, they talked about Chick-fil-A and how they sit down and they say, okay, if I got a problem, if you got a problem, I'll solve it. I'm going back to Ice Baby. They're trying to figure out, okay, this isn't not necessarily a problem, but how can we be more efficient? How can we do, things in less steps than what it's actually taken? What do we do? And so they came up with this. They said, okay, we're going to have this machine. Instead of it making it something that nobody liked to do, they got this machine and it made everybody want to do it. So when they have a break time or when they would have a downtime, the people would fight to do this. So one day I'm telling my family at dinner and my daughter, like 2 weeks later, she comes home and she's like, you're not going to believe this, but what you told me, I videotaped somebody actually doing it. So that's just video. You can play that, Kathy. It's just it just shows you, they stick the thing in the machine and it takes half of the paper off. So this is just how they make things more efficient. That is all CQI is. It is looking at something that we have and saying, how can we make our processes better? Now, the one thing that I had that one of the teams worked with for CSS, Child Support Services, was, somewhere there's a breakdown. Things are not cases are not being closed in a certain amount of days. And when they're not closed in a certain amount of time, it holds everybody else up. And I can't get my job done because they're not getting their job done. And so instead of saying, Jenny, you're the problem, Kathy, you're the problem, this says, okay, where is the problem? What is the problem? Let's figure out let's bring a team together. Let's figure out where the problem is and go from there. Okay, you can hit the next slide for me, Kathy. All right, just in case you wanted some light reading, I'm sure you're dying to. This is the book that it comes from, The Change Agent's Guide to Radical Improvement. This is where CQI, this is the Bible for CQI. It kind of walks you through the whole thing if you ever want that. I always throw that in there. I think I've had 1 or 2 people my whole life ever ask me for the book, but there's the title of it if you want it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're understanding organizational performance. Kathy, you can hit the next one. All right, how does child support in your state monitor organizational performance? Put that in the chat. Tell me, how does child support where you are currently monitor organizational performance? So having nothing to do with individual, but Okay, so I see evaluations. How else? How else would they monitor? If the organization is performing like it's supposed to, how would anybody there know it? Feedback from collaborators, yes. A monitoring team in Wisconsin. Oh, shout out Wisconsin. All right. Performance measures, okay. Compliance monitoring. Case audits. Yes, all those are fair. And you will probably see a little bit of CQI in some of these things. So California federal, okay, perfect. So a lot of evaluations, especially I would say that in South Carolina, a lot of the ways that they found out is, constituents or their people call them and tell them this isn't working, this didn't happen, this is not going right. So they even get it without even asking. All right, that's fair. Hit the next question, Kathy. All right, what are some ways that you or they become aware of problems in the organizational performance? So you get these evaluations. How do you personally become aware of it? Or your direct reports, your supervisors, how do they become aware of this? Become aware of regular meetings with the monitors from the bureau. Okay, so you have meetings, you discuss them in the meetings, you discuss the results. It's a reactive process. Your emailed monthly reports. So if you're emailed monthly reports, do you all read the entire monthly report? Is that something you're supposed to keep up with? Amanda, do you read? Does everybody in your organization read the monthly reports? That's honestly an honest question. For that matter, anybody, the monthly reports.
I honestly don't know if everybody actually reads them. I do.
You do. All right. You do. Some people do. Some people don't.
Right.
Okay. Meeting. Thank you so much for answering for me. I appreciate it. Meetings with the superior director. Fine. Have meetings in monthly one-on-one with your. Okay. So your supervisor is meeting with you maybe once a month. Some people do. Some people have meetings with their supervisors, and their supervisors really keep them, in the know of what's going on. Sometimes that just doesn't happen. And when I was working with DSS in South Carolina, that just wasn't happening. All the things that you guys have said here about how they should know, they were not really in the know. And that could have been because they're swamped and having 1,000 things to do. That wasn't a big deal. It didn't take precedence over things, more important things that needed to get done. All right, perfect. Kathy, we hit the next question. So what formal system does child support services in your state have in place to identify problems? Any problem at all. What formal system do you guys have? Okay, so Marianne says you read the monthly support reports. Okay. What formal system do you have in your state to identify problems? Okay, don't know what yours is in Iowa. That's fair. Self-reporting evaluations. Yes, I've heard those. Standard email account where problems, ideas, and suggestions can be sent. Kind of like a suggestion box, I would assume, but email. Okay, somebody else agreed with that. Benchmarks. We also conduct customer service surveys because your customers are going to tell you. Several reports generated statewide. All right, so it looks like, some of you are getting emails, some of you are getting reports generated. You have people, your customers or whoever that may be. I mean, their customer is a very broad term for, parents, children, people you work with. It can cover, a gamut. But you're hearing about it because somebody's telling you about it, okay? So they're saying, here's a problem, this didn't get done, and then you also have benchmarks. So what happens if those benchmarks are not being met? Marianne, can I ask you that question? Can you get on, hop on the mic and tell me that? So you said we have benchmarks. So we also conduct customer service surveys. So what happens if a benchmark is not being, reached? What happens, Marianne? What would be the next thing that they would do?
Right. So thanks for asking. Hi, everyone. Marianne Rosen from Wisconsin. So I'm talking not exclusively now about child support, also in our TANF funded employment programs. We have customer service surveys, etc. One of the really interesting things that we're doing right now in terms of continuous quality improvement is we have developed in our TANF funded employment programs, and we are developing in our child support program, parent advisory councils. And we are providing a forum for consumers of our services to share with us what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. In terms of how we address the reports from our Bureau of Regional Operations, that's where the monitors for the two programs are housed. We have regular meetings with those monitors, and we have the monitors go back to the agencies to share their evaluations and their monitoring reports. So we're not talking now about federal benchmarks that need to be met for federal funding. We're also talking about daily operations. Wisconsin was one of the states that received the SAVES grant, the Safe Access for Victims Economic Security. So one area of unintended barriers that we're looking at now is safe and full access to the child support program for domestic violence survivors. And we call to the table the directors and caseworkers at the 3 demo sites. So I hope that answers your question.
There's my question. So say that the parents are then, you know, they're in whatever, they're in their group and they've told y'all, then who monitors that it's actually being changed? That there's actually, that these things are being, you know, we've said, this is what needs to happen. Is there a group
Right.
in place that says,
Yep.
okay, here are the steps, we're going to do this and we're going to monitor and see?
Yep, thank you for asking. So we also have a Bureau of Analytics and Research that fuels our data-driven, not fuels, but oversees, collects, and analyzes our data. And so, for example, I'm just going to use, just because I was just at a meeting yesterday and it's on my mind, we got reports that a program that we have to assist people with emergency housing needs, we got reports that customers, about 40% of our customers who apply are not approved. So how do we know that? We know that because the Bureau of Analytics and Research is collecting data to show us. So one step that we took, this actually is sort of a pattern that's been prevalent for many years. So one step we took was we created an in-house task force that looks at things like approval rates for programs. And we try to identify pain points related to specific barriers. So for example, let's say domestic violence. And then we submit our recommendations to the bureau that oversees either TANF or child support. Here's a great example in child support. So we have right now in Wisconsin, we're undergoing a modernization project to update our systems. And we identified that lots of our consumers are confused when they read documents coming from our office because they're written at a 12+ grade level. So we created a team, part of the modernization team, that looks at literacy levels. And one of those teams is a team that I chair, the Domestic Violence Task Force. And we were able to take one of those documents, the child support application form, and go through it and identify hot spots where consumers might be triggered by wording. So that's one example of how we address unintended barriers to full access of our programs.
Well, Marianne, you might as well just teach my class for me because you're already doing it. And sorry, I did not turn that off. Oh, just drive crazy. All right. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I was just going to jump in real quick and to piggyback, Marianne, the same issues we're experiencing that here in South Carolina. And in fact, Clemson is doing some research on plain language communication and how to remove that communication barrier when we send out letters, et cetera, any type of communication to a custodial parent or an NCP. So very parallel. But Wisconsin, wow, you guys are doing some amazing things. I'm sure everywhere else is too, but wow, that's cool to hear.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll get through this, then I'm going to let you guys ask questions at the end, but thank you so much for sharing that, Marianne. Hit the next slide for me, please, Kathy. Okay, so this basically just tells you what quality assurance is, and it's, you know, the process of or activity designed to ensure that an organization meets their set standards. So that making sure the organization is meeting the things that they say they're supposed to deliver. Hit the next one, because a lot of people deal with QA. But here is CQI. It is data driven, 100% data driven. We've had people come and say, yeah, well, I went for my evaluation at the end of the year and they said this wasn't being done. And I'm like, I don't know even where to start and how to figure that out. That's what CQI comes into place, because it's not about you. It's about what's going on in the organization, and it's data driven. So it's for ongoing cycle of observing organizational performance, and it uses data. You're going back to data all the time. Okay, you're going back to data. The next one, Kathy. Here's some comparisons. I will let you read those. I'm not going to read those to you aloud, but we'll put them in there. And jump on the mic once she gets all these in here. Is there anything that stands out to you in the comparison of the two? When you're looking at the comparison of the two, anything that stands out to you in the difference between QA and CQI? Go back, Kathy. There you go. Anybody? You can put it in the chat, or you can tell me out loud.
Hi. I think if I'm understanding, so for example, that first item under QA, there seems to be a focus on individuals, whereas there's more of a systemic
Yes,
focus with CQI.
exactly right. QA in certain ways feels a little more personal. CQI takes all the personal out of it, and it makes it about the processes. It's about the processes. How has performance been? What's going on? It's not my performance, it's the process performance. Maybe my people weren't trained well. Maybe I didn't know how to train them so that they would know that the case closures had to be done in 7 days. So let's look at that and see. Any others? Anybody else? Any other comments about this? Okay, you can go to the next one, Kathy. All right, so this is the thing to me about culture. And when you really put an emphasis on CQI, it takes it away from just being QA, because QA and CQI are very compatible with each other. And the training about it is a really big deal, but it creates this culture that if there is a problem, we are going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to figure out what it is, and we're going to stop it. It's going, we're going to stop it. Hit the next one, so Kathy. I think I have you some information. All right, so this is just, a fixed mindset. CQI is not a fixed mindset. It is a growth mindset. So the fix says, I don't have enough hours in the day. How am I possibly supposed to do all of CQI and try to figure out how to do this when I've got so many other things going on? I got 15,000 case studies. I can't worry about this too. But it's a proactive approach too. Instead of always being reactive, even though in the beginning it feels like you're reacting because there's a problem, you're trying to figure it out. But if you can figure out where the issue is and fix it, it's like having cancer or anything else. You're trying to get to the root of what the problem is. Everything you do is, I'm trying to get to the root. And when you can find out the root of it, then it's going to make everything so much easier. It will make everything so much more efficient. And that's the biggest goal of CQIs. I'm trying to be efficient. Just trying to make everything we do efficient. When you think about this, think about Chick-fil-A. I mean, Chick-fil-A, if nothing else, they are efficient. Their systems have systems in place. And if there's a problem with that, we're going to figure out what the system is and we're going to make it better. Okay? That's what CQI does. Hit the next one. Now, here's a growth mindset. And this to me is a really, really big deal. And I'll explain this to you. Anybody want to read this out loud for me? Anybody willing to read it out loud?
If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions.
Okay, this is CQI. Because what happens is, there's a problem, there's an issue. Can you just tell me what to do about it and let's do it? All right? But it doesn't always work out that way. So just like good old Einstein says, if you have a problem, it's the 55 minutes. Instead of I have an hour to solve a problem, 5 minutes I can do it, but I've got to figure it out. So you're thinking about the problem. You're processing what it could be, what's going on. And another thing about CQI teams, another beauty about CQI teams, this is not, a lot of times the directors, the supervisors, they really don't, they're not down and, working with the people who are out in the community. And so they're so far removed, or I'm in the office doing my job every day and I'm far removed from some of the issues that you're experiencing. I just know there's a problem, but I don't really know what it is. Well, a CQI team, the beauty of it is it's supposed to be made up of people from all different areas of the organization. So if you're in CSS, if I'm in child support services, it needs to be people who are at the top all the way to the people that are going out and meeting with the parents, meeting with the families, and going to court. Because everybody brings a different perspective to the table, and everybody is trying to come together to figure out what the root of this problem is. And that's where the 55 minutes comes in. You are spending time really trying to digest it. And I don't mean a literal 55 minutes, and I don't mean this should take hours and hours. It should not. But this entire, if you were to go through CQI, it will teach you various ways. There are a bunch of different ways you can do it to kind of walk yourself quickly through the process to figure out what the problem is. And then what I always say is you figure out, here's the problem. What do we do to solve it? And then you kind of get ideas from people. And then you say, okay, we're going to try one. We're going to look at this one and we're going to investigate it and see. And you actually put things in place. You actually implement things to see if they make any changes. And if they don't make any changes, you say, that wasn't it. Let's move on to the next thing we think it could be. This doesn't take months and months. This is a dip my toe in and see if we can make a little change. And if that works, great. Then we'll start going more and we'll make bigger changes. And then it'll end up being changed in the whole organization instead of just being in our tiny little office. But you start small and then you go big. But that starting small can mean you try 4 or 5 different things to figure out where you think the root of the problem is. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yes, that makes sense to me.
Go ahead.
Which I'm with you. I was going to say, one of the things that I really like about the way that Melanie ran CQI in South Carolina, with Child Support Services Division, like Melanie said, they involved and engaged team members from all parts of the organization, which created that sense of belonging and ownership for their jobs. I know in South Carolina, Child Support Service Division has a high rate of turnover. And by being engaged in problem solving for the agency, those people have stuck around. They have stayed longer. They have not left the organization yet. So using ideas that, your team members come up with to make processes better, and then watching those processes get better because of my ideas or because of our team's ideas, it just creates that pathway for retention, ownership, pride in what you do, all of those good things that we want for such a high stressful job.
And the next one, Kathy.
That is our.
Okay, so let me go back and do a brief explanation to you about something. So say that you decide your group comes together and you're like, we have to figure out, is there a problem? And everybody, there are tons of problems. People are like, oh, well, how about this? You together as your team come up with the one you really want to concentrate on, the one you really think this could be a real catalyst for change. Because that's CQI is, how can we change this and make this better? So, I always tell a story about my daughter. She had these problems, these health issues. She was having spots all over her body. And, you ever had anything, wrong? You go to the doctor and they say, oh, this is what it is. And then you try whatever they gave you. That wasn't what it was. That's not working. We had to figure something else. Well, we did this 3 separate occasions. She's having spots on her body. Go to the doctor and they're like, okay, this is what it is. Here's your medication. It would work for a little while. Would not. For a little while, like barely enough to take any of the spots away. And then it wouldn't. We go to a different doctor. They would refer us to a different doctor. That's kind of what CQI is. You're your own advocate. Okay. You're your team's advocate. You are going to the doctor and you're saying, here's a problem. How do we figure this out? How do we solve it? And it took years for my child to finally figure out she had a weird type of psoriasis. This is because I feel like it's almost 1 step forward sometimes and 2 steps back, or 3 steps forward and 1 step back, because you're saying problem. Okay. How about we try this? But you're doing this quickly. If this doesn't work, I'm not spending months doing it, because we're going to try and see. So for instance, when we worked with CSS, they started saying, okay, cases should close in 7 days. What's happening? And they came together and they came up with 5 things they thought it could be. And they said, all right, we're going to start with 1. We think training is an issue somewhere along the line, because if you look at the data, one of the teams in Greenville, County, they seem to be getting their cases closed faster than we are. So one of the people on the team said, I know the person that does the training in Greenville. I'm going to call them. They call them and they say, what do you do for your training? Well, they were doing 3 or 4 things that most of the other counties weren't doing. So they, as a team, they say, okay, I tell you what, why don't we all, let's try, the people that are just the people on this team, why don't we try this training, do this for the next month, and then at the end of this month, we'll do the data again. We will get another data collection, and we'll see if it's made any changes at all, okay? And you know what? It didn't. That's not what it was, because they said, okay, so I like the idea that we're all up in our training, because everybody's training should be the same, and it's not. So that was really good. Then they go to the next thing, because they don't, I told you they come up with 5. They're like, we'll go with number 2. And they start to try to put in place, and they start looking at the data, and it started making slow changes, right? Just slow changes. And they're like, that's good. Let's keep going. So they would meet, they would meet over Zoom. They would meet once a month. Once they got together, you figure out the problem, you come up with what you think is actually going on, why you think, because it's a why analysis. Why do we think this is happening? You come up with your ideas, the team votes and decides which one they want to start with, and then you start with that one. And that's the one you concentrate on. And that's the data that you look at. And so I'm not going to people saying, Kathy, I noticed that you did not, it's not about that. It's about, look, group, this has got to be better. How do we figure it out? What do we do from here? And let's do a little bit, come back and check it. It's almost like a guess and check when you were in math years ago, and you would say, it looks like it could be that, maybe you're not, but this is a little guess and check, because you don't know if it's working until the data shows you it's working. You don't know if the medication's working until you don't have spots on your body, or until it's working, until whatever problem you had has been solved. So it does take a little bit of time, but the more you do it, the quicker people get at it, and the quicker they start, your organization starts to say, that's a problem. I bet we can do it. Why don't we try this? And people are on board with it. So it is a mindset. It is a growth mindset for sure. But that is literally continuous quality improvement in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm trying to give you the big overview, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of little things going on in this. I spend days talking about this, 2 or 3 days training people on this. So I'm trying to give you the very, very shortened version. Anybody have any questions for me that I may or may not be able to answer, but I'll do my best. You can chat them or you can talk to me. Okay, so no questions that I see.
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay.
Are there other folks here from, I assume, other training partnerships? If so, I'd be curious how people integrate CQI in training partnerships, in training delivery services in child support.
Hi, everyone. Mary Ann again from Wisconsin. So I am the Division of Family and Economic Security's Policy Initiatives Advisor, but I was also hired, part of my job description is to serve at, and that is housed in the Department of Children and Families. Sorry about that. And part of my job when I was hired was to serve as the Department of Children and Families departmental supervisor of our in-house training team. Our training team is called the Partner Training Team. We contract with 2 agencies. One is a private organization called Dynamic Workforce Solutions. Most of our trainers come from DWFS. And then I also partner with the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh's, it's a training division over at UW Oshkosh. So a few of our trainers come from UWO. So I do the contract administration, but I'm also in charge of monitoring performance. And I get monthly reports from the training team's in-house supervisor, a gentleman who works for Dynamic Workforce. He oversees the trainers and then I oversee them. So I got monthly reports. I also get an annual report. One thing that we do on a regular basis is, and when I say we, I mean myself, the in-house supervisor, the gentleman who supervises all the trainers, is that he and I meet regularly. So about sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on the situation, sometimes it's just once a month, with the bureau directors of the Bureau of Child Support, the Bureau of Working Families, which houses our TANF-funded employment programs. We don't meet so regularly with the other bureau in our program, which is the Bureau, well, there are two more, but the Bureau of Refugee Programs. But what we do is we meet regularly and we identify, looking at the data that's been collected and revealed in those reports that I get, we identify pain points. For example, we do know after the training team teaches a course. So let's say the course is sex trafficking, okay? Like how to work with applicants to the child support program who may have a history of having been sex trafficked. We actually have a class in that. If we identify through our data collection that of the 30 people registered for that class, only 10 showed up with the pre-work they were supposed to do for the class, we report that. And then we talk to the bureau director and we try to identify, what we could do to improve. So let me give you a really specific example of how I'm so excited, how our training team is going to be improving another pain point, which is what I referred to earlier. What is this child support program? I'm not understanding these documents. So we can't assume that just because we've reviewed the documents internally for trauma-informed language and for literacy, we can't assume that every single consumer will then say, wow, you guys did such a great job. Now I understand the whole child support program. What we're going to do is we're going to implement something that Texas does. If you go on the Texas Attorney General's site, you'll see that they have video clips that walk people through the child support program. It's amazing. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't looked at that site in years, but to the best of my knowledge, these are people within the program who are doing the talking. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create videos that consumers can click on and hear very short presentations about how to get involved with the child support program, what safety measures we have in place for you, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Hi, this is Tina from Pennsylvania. And just a real quick update of kind of how we look at continuous quality CQI, because the words are hard this afternoon. We do it within our own processes in the Training Institute in Pennsylvania. And then we may also get feedback from counties. Sometimes we have to beg for feedback for improvements and understanding what's working for them and not. And then we also will work with the state to also help them with things that possibly they are wanting to improve, or kind of working with the entire group. So everyone's working together for those same small improvements. But we use it a lot internally, just in our processes to improve.
Great. Creating a culture of continuous quality improvement. That's amazing.
I think was it, oh gosh, Tina, was it Tina? Christina? Tina. One thing that is resonating with me is what you're saying is, you know, they come to you and you go to them and they say what's working as far as training and what needs improvement. And one of the successes that Melanie had was putting that ownership back on the team members and the staff at Child Support Services Division in South Carolina, and letting them, you know, instead of it coming from upper management via a trainer, it actually came from the folks who are working those caseloads and boots on the ground. So there was more buy-in to adopt change ideas, if that makes sense. So I love it. I love it. Use it in your own teams. We try to use it in our team too. Our
Sure.
team has gotten smaller over the years, though.
That's the best thing about CQI. It does not have to be a big team. It's definitely small, medium, large team. I mean, anybody can do it. And I've trained guys and, you know, gals who used to be in the military, and they are like, we did this kind of thing in the military. We just called it something else. It's like, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. It's a basic idea. It's just how you go about doing it. And CQI just lays it out. It gives you a bunch of different options. That book also walks you through a lot of different things. So more than one way of doing it. Thank you guys for your questions, comments. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, well, I think that PowerPoint, you're gonna be able to get that out if you are
Yes.
interested in that. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Melanie and Kathy. Once I get that PowerPoint slides from them, and once I get this recording posted and available, I'll send out a follow-up email to everybody that registered for this presentation, and I'll make sure to include both of those, the recording as well as the slide deck for you all, so that you can go back and review it. And I can also pop in one more time, if you missed it at the beginning, those links for if you want to join our distribution list, if you would like to submit something for CSTP or share anything in our newsletter or our next conference calls, and to join our next networking call. I believe this is the correct link here. So you can register for that. That'll be at the end of September. So thank you so much, both Melanie and Kathy. This was really excellent information for everybody. And I hope that it was helpful for you all. And if any of you have any questions and you would like me to put you in touch with Kathy or Melanie, just shoot me an email and I can get you in touch with them if you think of something later. I feel like I'm kind of the queen of that. I can't think of it on the spot, but then later I'm like, wait a minute, I should have asked that question. So I'm happy to send your contact information their way, or your questions their way as well.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have a great day. Thank you so much. Let us know if you need us. We're here.